It all began on a cold December morning when the Grand Art Gallery in the city opened its doors for one of the most anticipated exhibitions of the year. Among the golden frames and dazzling spotlights, one portrait captured everyone's heart, a young man with soft eyes, a quiet smile, and a look of deep sadness, almost as if the artist had captured a soul rather than a face. The plaque beneath it read, "The Silent Hope." People whispered about the mysterious subject. Some said he was the artist's brother, others believed he was a war survivor. But no one knew for sure. Not until an old cleaning lady, frail but sharp-eyed, stopped dead in her tracks, her mop slipping from her trembling hands as she pointed toward the portrait and cried out, her voice echoing through the marble hall, "Sir, that boy lived with me in the orphanage." The entire room fell silent. The murmurs stopped. Cameras turned toward her. And in that one moment, the truth that had been buried for decades began to surface. If you believe in the power of kindness, in the beauty of second chances, and that every lost soul deserves to be found again, please like this video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to Heart Tale, because what you're about to hear will stay with you forever. The woman's name was Martha Hale. She had worked at St. Mercy Orphanage nearly 40 years ago, a place that smelled of chalk dust and wet blankets, filled with the laughter and tears of children who had no one to call their own. Among them was a boy named Samuel. He was around 7 when he arrived, small, pale, and silent, clutching a tattered piece of fabric with the letter S stitched into it. Nobody knew where he came from. He never spoke about his past, not even when the other children teased or when Sister Agnes, the kind nun who ran the place, gently asked. But Samuel had something different about him, an old sadness in his eyes, the kind that belonged to someone who had already seen too much. Martha had taken a special liking to him. She used to sneak him extra biscuits from the kitchen, patch up his torn clothes, and tell him bedtime stories even when she was exhausted from scrubbing floors all day. Samuel never said much, but he listened. He listened with such intensity that she often wondered if her words were the only warmth he had left in his world. Years passed, and the orphanage went through hard times. Donations dried up, winters grew colder, and children came and went. But Samuel stayed. He began to draw, on paper, on walls, sometimes even on old bits of cardboard. His drawings were hauntingly beautiful. Faces of people he missed, places he dreamt of, skies he longed to touch. Martha once caught him sketching a portrait of Sister Agnes, and it was so perfect, so alive, that it brought tears to her eyes. But life had its cruel ways. One stormy night, when Samuel was 15, the orphanage caught fire. It started in the kitchen, spread quickly through the wooden halls, and by the time the fire brigade arrived, much of the building was gone. In the chaos, several children went missing. Martha had searched desperately for Samuel, screaming his name through the smoke, her hands burned, her lungs choked, but he never answered. They found no trace of him. Some said he had run away. Others said he hadn't survived. Martha never believed he was gone. Deep in her heart, she carried the image of that quiet boy with the sad eyes and the gift of turning pain into beauty. After that night, the orphanage closed forever. Martha's life drifted into the background of the city, working odd jobs, cleaning offices, caring for places where others came to dream. Decades went by. Her hair turned gray, her hands wrinkled, but her memory of Samuel stayed sharp as glass. She often visited old churches, whispering prayers for him. But life, as it often does, gave her no answers. Not until that morning in the gallery, when she saw his face again, not as a broken child, but as a masterpiece hanging beneath golden light. The gallery's curator rushed to her side, surprised and concerned, as she wept uncontrollably before the painting. She wasn't just crying for recognition, she was crying for all the lost years, all the children who never got to be seen, for the silent ones whose stories were buried beneath time. The artist, a young woman named Eliza Ward, soon came forward, visibly shaken. She told Martha that the painting had been one of her late father's final works. He had passed away just 6 months earlier, leaving behind his entire collection. "He called this one the Silent Hope," Eliza said softly, "but he never told us who the boy was. He only said that the boy saved his life once." Martha's tears froze midstream. "Saved his life?" she whispered. Eliza nodded, her eyes glistening. She then led Martha into the private section of the gallery, where her father's diaries and sketches were displayed. And there, on one of the yellowed pages, was a sketch of a little boy holding a tattered fabric marked with an S. Underneath it, in neat handwriting, were the words, "He found me when no one else would." The story that unfolded from the artist's journal was nothing short of miraculous. Decades ago, long before he became a celebrated painter, Eliza's father, whose name was Henry Ward, had been a young, homeless man struggling with addiction and despair. One freezing night, he collapsed near the ruins of an old building on the edge of town, what was once the St. Mercy Orphanage. He wrote that he woke up to the sound of a boy's voice whispering his name. When he opened his eyes, a thin teenage boy with ash-covered hair and haunted eyes was kneeling beside him, pressing an old blanket against his chest. The boy told him to hold on, then disappeared into the snow. When Henry woke again, he was in the hospital, saved by a stranger who had called for help before vanishing. The police could never identify the boy, only that he matched the description of a child once missing from the orphanage fire years before. Henry never forgot him. That face, that voice, he carried them in his heart and painted them again and again, hoping one day to give the boy the recognition he deserved. Martha's heart trembled as she listened. Her mind traveled back to the night of the fire, to the boy who had always been brave beyond his years. "He made it," she whispered through her tears. "He made it out." Though no one knew where Samuel went after that night, it seemed he had survived, long enough to save a stranger, long enough to leave his mark on the world. The realization broke her completely, but it also healed something inside her that had been shattered for decades. She stood before the portrait, reached out a trembling hand, and whispered, "You were always meant to be found." The gallery staff, visitors, and even Eliza watched in silence as the old woman spoke to the painted face like a mother greeting her lost child. Over the next few days, news of Martha's discovery spread quickly. Newspapers wrote about the orphan who became art. Donations poured into charities for children without families. The St. Mercy ruins were restored into a memorial garden for orphans, with a plaque that read, "In memory of Samuel, whose silence spoke hope into the world." Martha became something of